They came from the stars, not as allies, but as conquerors, an overwhelming force that loomed over Earth with a single chilling demand: submit or perish. The Hegemony Alliance had arrived, bringing with them not just ships, but the promise of power that could crush a world. They offered humanity a choice: join their empire or face annihilation. But what they did not know, what they could not fathom, was the heart of Earth's people, the fire that burns within even the most fragile of species. Earth would not kneel, and from that defiance, a war would begin. A war that would ignite a revolution across the galaxy. This is the story of humanity's stand against the impossible, against the odds, against the ultimate power. This is the story of Earth's refusal to obey. The day the sky changed. The morning of March 15, 2157, started like any other day on Earth. Coffee shops opened their doors in Tokyo, children walked to school in Stockholm, and farmers tended their fields in Iowa. Nobody expected that by sunset, humanity would face the greatest challenge in its history. At exactly 12:00 GMT, the sky above every major city on Earth darkened. Massive ships, each one larger than Manhattan, descended through the clouds like floating mountains. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly silver light, and strange symbols pulsed along their sides in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Dr. Sarah Chen was in her laboratory at the Global Space Research Center when the ships appeared. As Earth's leading expert on theoretical alien contact protocols, she had spent years preparing for this moment. But nothing could have prepared her for the reality of it. "My God," whispered her assistant Marcus, as they watched through the lab's wide windows. "There must be hundreds of them." Sarah counted quickly. Every continent had at least 12 ships hovering above its major population centers. The technology required for such precise planetary positioning was beyond anything humanity had achieved. These beings had crossed the void between stars as easily as humans crossed oceans. Around the world, military forces scrambled to respond. Fighter jets launched from air bases, their pilots knowing full well that their advanced aircraft were probably no match for vessels that had traveled between the stars. Naval fleets repositioned themselves, and missile defense systems came online for the first time in decades. But the alien ships made no aggressive moves. They simply waited, hanging in the sky like silent judges. The voice from the stars. At 6:00 p.m. GMT, every communication device on Earth simultaneously activated. Televisions turned on by themselves, radios crackled to life, and smartphones displayed a single message in every human language. "Attention, inhabitants of the third planet. Prepare to receive an important message from the Hegemony Alliance." The voice that followed was deep and resonant, clearly artificial, but carrying undertones that suggested vast intelligence and absolute authority. It spoke in perfect English, but somehow every human on Earth heard it in their native language. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Supreme Coordinator Zalthor of the Hegemony Alliance. We represent a coalition of 47 star systems and over 200 intelligent species. For 3,000 of your years, we have maintained peace and order across this section of the galaxy." Sarah felt her hands trembling as she recorded every word. This was the moment that would divide human history into before and after. "Your species has reached a level of technological development that can no longer be ignored. Your radio transmissions, your space vehicles, and your nuclear weapons have made your presence known throughout local space. The time has come for Earth to take its place within the greater galactic community." The transmission paused, and Sarah could almost feel the collective held breath of 7 billion humans. However, integration into the Hegemony Alliance requires certain adjustments to your current civilization. Your aggressive tendencies, your chaotic governmental systems, and your destructive impact on your planet's environment mark you as a species requiring guidance and control. The word control sent chills down Sarah's spine. Therefore, the Hegemony Alliance offers Earth the following terms. First, all human governments will be dissolved and replaced by a single planetary administration approved by the Alliance. Second, Human population will be reduced to sustainable levels through controlled reproduction programs. Third, all military forces will be disbanded, and alliance peacekeeping forces will maintain order. Fourth, human technological development will be directed by alliance science councils to prevent dangerous innovations. Fifth, human cultural practices that promote individualism and rebellion will be gradually eliminated in favor of collective harmony. Sarah's laboratory fell silent except for the hum of equipment. Outside, she could see people on the streets, all staring up at the sky with expressions of shock and disbelief. "These terms are not negotiable," the voice continued. "They are the result of careful analysis of your species' psychological and social patterns. Compliance will ensure humanity's survival and eventual prosperity within the Alliance. Resistance will result in unfortunate but necessary consequences." The transmission ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. The emergency session. Within hours, the United Nations Security Council convened the largest emergency session in its history. Representatives from every nation on Earth gathered in New York, while the massive alien ships continued their silent vigil overhead. President Elena Martinez of the United States stood at the podium, her usually confident voice strained with the weight of the moment. "Fellow leaders, we face a choice that no generation of humans has ever confronted. These beings offer us survival at the cost of everything that makes us human." Prime Minister James Richardson of the United Kingdom leaned forward in his chair. "The alternative appears to be extinction. Their technology is clearly superior to ours. What chance do we have in a conflict with beings who travel between the stars?" President Li Wei of China shook his head firmly. "The terms they offer are not life, they are slavery. They speak of reducing our population, controlling our reproduction, and eliminating our culture. They want to turn us into a species of worker drones." Chancellor Anna Hoffmann of Germany stood up. "But if we refuse, how many will die? Our weapons may be primitive compared to theirs, but they are still capable of destroying our cities. Are we prepared to see billions perish for the sake of principle?" The debate continued for hours, with representatives arguing passionately on both sides. Some urged acceptance, believing that humanity could gradually regain its freedom within the alliance structure. Others demanded defiance, insisting that freedom was worth any price. Dr. Sarah Chen had been invited to the session as an expert consultant. When called upon to speak, she stood with her tablet displaying the analysis her team had completed. "Honorable delegates, my team has analyzed the hegemony's terms carefully. What they describe is not integration, but absorption. They intend to slowly erase human civilization and replace it with something that serves their purposes. The species they speak of controlling numbered in the hundreds, yet they rule only 47 star systems. What happened to the others?" Her question hung in the air like a death sentence. If we examine their demands closely, we see a pattern. They want to eliminate the very traits that allowed humanity to survive and thrive: our creativity, our independence, our willingness to take risks and challenge authority. These beings fear what we might become if left free to develop. Secretary General Maria Santos called for a vote. The question was simple, but would echo through history. Accept the hegemony's terms, or reject them, and face the consequences. The vote was closer than anyone expected, but by a margin of 68%, the United Nations voted to reject the alien ultimatum. Earth's answer. The response was broadcast on every channel and transmitted on every frequency Earth could generate. President Martinez, speaking for all of humanity, delivered the message that would change everything. To the Hegemony Alliance and Supreme Coordinator Zalthor, we have received your terms and considered them carefully. After long deliberation, the people of Earth have reached a unanimous decision. She paused, looking directly into the camera with steel in her eyes. We reject your ultimatum. We reject your control. We reject your vision of humanity's future. For thousands of years, humans have fought against tyranny in all its forms. We have died for freedom, bled for independence, and sacrificed everything to remain free. We will not surrender that freedom now, not even to beings from the stars. Around the world, humans gathered around screens, holding their breath. You speak of our aggressive tendencies as if they were flaws to be corrected. But it was our aggressive curiosity that led us to explore every corner of our world. It was our aggressive innovation that lifted us from caves to cities. It was our aggressive compassion that taught us to help those in need, even at cost to ourselves. Martinez's voice grew stronger with each word. You offer us survival, but what you describe is not life. It is existence without purpose, growth without direction, peace without meaning. Humanity chooses instead to live free, even if that life is shorter than what you offer. The transmission continued with a message that surprised even the most optimistic human observers. However, we extend to you and your alliance an alternative proposal. Join us as equals. Share your knowledge freely, as we will share ours. Learn from our differences instead of trying to eliminate them. Help us build a galaxy where every species can thrive according to its own nature, not according to the demands of others. The President's final words rang across Earth like a battle cry. If you cannot accept equality, if you insist on domination, then you will discover what every tyrant in human history has learned. Free people fight harder, think faster, and endure longer than those who serve in chains. We are ready for whatever comes next. The storm gathers. The alien response came within minutes. The ships above Earth's cities began to move, arranging themselves in attack formations that needed no translation. Energy readings spiked across all monitoring stations, and the air itself seemed to crackle with building power. But something unexpected happened. Instead of immediately attacking, the hegemony ships hesitated. For the first time in 3,000 years, a species had refused their ultimatum and offered an alternative. Their perfect system of control had encountered something it wasn't designed to handle. Genuine defiance coupled with a vision of something better. Supreme Coordinator Zalthor's voice returned to Earth's communication networks, but this time it carried an edge of anger and confusion. Your refusal is noted, humans of Earth. Your counter-proposal is rejected. You have chosen to make yourselves enemies of galactic peace and order. Prepare for the consequences of your arrogance. The ships began to descend, their weapons charging with lethal energy. But as they moved into attack position, something extraordinary happened across Earth. Instead of panic and chaos, humanity began to organize with unprecedented efficiency. Emergency broadcasts coordinated civilian evacuations. Military forces, united for the first time in decades, prepared defensive positions. Scientists and engineers worked frantically to adapt Earth's weapons for a conflict beyond anything they had imagined. But most importantly, the message that President Martinez had delivered began to spread beyond Earth. Hidden among the standard communication protocols were data packets containing humanity's history, its art, its dreams, and its offer of equality. These packets rode the same quantum communication networks that the hegemony used to maintain control over its vast empire. For the first time in millennia, species across the galaxy heard a voice that spoke of freedom instead of order, of growth instead of stagnation, of hope instead of mere survival. In the deepest reaches of space, on worlds that had forgotten the meaning of independence, beings began to remember what it felt like to dream of something better. The war that was about to begin would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It would not just be a conflict between species, but between two fundamentally different visions of what intelligent life could become. As the hegemony ships began their attack on humanity's cities, nobody could predict that this moment would mark not the end of human independence, but the beginning of galactic revolution. Earth had chosen defiance, and the consequences would reshape the stars themselves. The impossible war. When David met Goliath. The first attack came at dawn over New York City. Sarah Chen watched from her laboratory as beams of coherent energy lanced down from the hegemony ships, striking military installations with surgical precision. The weapons were unlike anything in human experience, not explosive but somehow draining, leaving behind empty spaces where buildings had simply ceased to exist. "They're not trying to destroy everything," Marcus observed, his face pressed against the reinforced window. They're being selective. Sarah nodded, understanding the horrible efficiency of it. They want our infrastructure intact. They still think they can force us to surrender. Around the world, the pattern repeated. The aliens targeted military bases, government buildings, and communication centers, but left civilian areas largely untouched. It was psychological warfare on a planetary scale. Demonstrate overwhelming power while minimizing casualties to break human will to resist. But humanity's response surprised even the most optimistic resistance leaders. Instead of surrendering, people adapted with remarkable speed. Amateur radio operators replaced destroyed communication networks. Citizens with hunting rifles positioned themselves on rooftops. Scientists worked around the clock to understand and counter alien technology. Dr. James Wright, Earth's leading physicist, made the first breakthrough 3 days into the invasion. Working in a makeshift laboratory deep underground, he discovered something extraordinary about the hegemony's energy weapons. They're using quantum field manipulation, he explained to the Emergency Military Council via secure transmission. But the field patterns are incredibly stable, almost rigid. They've optimized for efficiency over adaptability. General Patricia Hayes, newly appointed as Earth's unified military commander, leaned forward. What does that mean for us, Doctor? It means their weapons are predictable. Once we understand the frequency patterns, we can build countermeasures. Their technology is advanced but static. Ours is primitive but evolving. Wright's team worked with desperate energy, creating the first generation of quantum scramblers, devices that could briefly disrupt the aliens' energy beams. They were crude, unreliable, and had a tendency to explode, but they worked. The first successful counterattack came during the Battle of London. As hegemony ships moved to eliminate the underground resistance networks, they encountered something they had never faced before: rapidly evolving opposition. Human fighter pilots, flying aircraft hastily modified with Wright's scramblers, dove through the aliens' energy fields and struck with conventional missiles. The damage was minimal, but the psychological impact was enormous. For the first time in the invasion, hegemony ships withdrew from a planned attack. Innovation, born from desperation. As weeks turned into months, humanity's greatest strength began to show itself. While the hegemony had overwhelming technological superiority, humans had something their enemies had forgotten: the ability to innovate under pressure. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos led the development of guerrilla tactics specifically designed for asymmetric warfare against technologically superior opponents. Her teams learned to use the aliens' own efficiency against them. They operate on predictable patterns, she explained to resistance leaders around the world. Their ships follow optimal flight paths, their troops move in formation, their attacks follow logical sequences. We need to be illogical, unpredictable, and willing to take risks they would never consider. Santos's tactics proved devastatingly effective. Human forces began using construction equipment as improvised weapons, turning office buildings into fortress-like strongholds, and employing tactics that violated every principle of military efficiency the aliens understood. The hegemony's response revealed a critical weakness. Their forces began making increasingly desperate attempts to restore order, abandoning their surgical approach for more aggressive tactics. They had ruled through overwhelming demonstration of power, but they had never actually fought a prolonged war against determined opposition. Meanwhile, Dr. Sarah Chen made a discovery that would change everything. While analyzing captured alien communication equipment, she found something incredible hidden in the quantum data streams. They're not just talking to each other, she told the assembled scientific council. They're sending reports back to dozens of worlds across the galaxy, and some of those worlds are asking questions. The data revealed something the hegemony had tried to keep secret. Earth's defiance was inspiring rebellion throughout their empire. Species that had accepted subjugation for centuries were beginning to question why they needed to be controlled at all. Look at this, Sarah displayed her analysis on the main screen. These are communication logs from the Vorthan system. Their planetary council is demanding to know why the hegemony is spending so many resources fighting a single primitive world. Here, from the Kalari clusters, they're asking what makes humans so dangerous that they require such extreme measures. The implications were staggering. Humanity's rebellion wasn't just about Earth anymore. It was becoming a symbol that threatened the very foundation of hegemony control. The turning point. The war entered its most critical phase when humanity achieved its first major technological breakthrough. Dr. Wright's team, working with captured alien equipment, discovered how to reverse engineer the hegemony's quantum field generators. "We can't match their power output," Wright explained to the Emergency Council. "But we don't need to. We understand something they don't. Adaptability trumps efficiency when conditions change rapidly." The breakthrough led to the development of the first human quantum weapons, devices that were crude and unpredictable compared to alien technology, but which could be modified and adapted in real time during combat. The test came during the Battle of Geneva, when hegemony forces launched their largest offensive yet. Supreme Coordinator Zalthor himself oversaw the attack, intending to break human resistance once and for all. But humanity had prepared a surprise. As alien ships descended on the city, they encountered not just conventional defenses, but something unprecedented, a coordinated quantum field disruption that turned their own weapons against them. Lieutenant Commander David Park, piloting the first human ship equipped with reverse-engineered alien technology, led the counterattack. His vessel was a patchwork of human engineering and captured alien components, held together by determination and desperate innovation. "All units, this is Phoenix 1, Park broadcast as he dove through the alien formation. "Remember, we don't need to match them. We just need to survive long enough to learn." The battle raged for 18 hours. Human forces suffered terrible casualties, but they achieved something unprecedented. They forced a hegemony fleet to retreat. More importantly, they captured intact alien vessels and their occupants. The prisoners revealed information that changed everything. The hegemony wasn't as united as it appeared. Many member species contributed reluctantly, held in line by fear rather than loyalty. Some had been conquered so long ago that they had forgotten they had ever been free. "They rule through predictability," explained Commander Thale, a captured alien officer who had begun cooperating with human interrogators. "Every species follows the same pattern: resistance, defeat, acceptance, integration. But you humans, you're not following the pattern. Unity in crisis." As news of humanity's continued resistance spread across the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen. Species that had been quiet for centuries started asking questions. Worlds that had accepted hegemony rule without challenge began demanding explanations. The quantum communication networks that the aliens used to maintain control became highways for revolutionary ideas. Hidden among routine administrative data, human messages spread like wildfire. Stories of freedom, examples of innovation, and proof that resistance was possible. Dr. Chen intercepted communications from dozens of worlds, each showing growing signs of unrest. "The Kalari have stopped responding to production quotas," she reported. "The Vorthons are asking for clarification on tax obligations. 3 worlds in the outer spiral have gone completely silent." The hegemony's response was swift and brutal. Fleets that had been attacking Earth were recalled to deal with growing rebellion in their own territory. For the first time since the invasion began, the pressure on humanity decreased. But Supreme Coordinator Zalthor made a critical error. Instead of recognizing that the old system was failing, he decided to make an example of Earth that would terrify other potential rebels into submission. "Prepare the planet killer," he ordered his fleet commanders. "If we cannot control these humans, we will eliminate them completely. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy the Alliance." The decision would prove to be the hegemony's greatest mistake. As word of the planned genocide spread through the quantum networks, species across the galaxy realized that if the Alliance would destroy an entire world to maintain control, none of them were truly safe. The spark of revolution. The moment came during what historians would later call the Night of Falling Stars. Hegemony ships across a dozen systems simultaneously received the same message from their home worlds: "We are free. Join us or leave." The rebellion that had begun with humanity's defiance exploded across the galaxy in a coordinated uprising that caught the hegemony completely unprepared. Species that had been subjects for millennia suddenly remembered how to fight for themselves. On Earth, the news arrived through intercepted alien communications. Sarah Chen stood in the command center, watching displays that showed hegemony fleets fragmenting as ships defected to join local rebellions. "It's working," she whispered, hardly daring to believe it. "They're actually fighting back." The Kalari had seized control of their orbital shipyards. The Vorthons had declared independence and were advancing on hegemony administrative centers. Dozens of other worlds were following suit, using tactics and strategies inspired by humanity's example. But the most important development came from an unexpected source. Commander Thiel, the captured alien officer who had been working with human forces, made contact with rebellious elements within the hegemony fleet itself. "Many of us never wanted to fight this war," he explained to General Hayes. "We serve because we know nothing else, but watching your species has reminded us that there are alternatives. If you're willing to accept our help, we can give you something that could end this conflict." What Thiel offered was unprecedented. The complete technical specifications for hegemony command and control systems, along with the personal access codes of Supreme Coordinator Zalthor himself. "Why?" Hayes asked. "Why would you betray your own people?" Thiel's answer summed up what was happening across the galaxy. "Because after seeing what you humans are willing to sacrifice for freedom, I realized they haven't been my people for a very long time." As the second year of the war began, humanity found itself no longer fighting alone. Ships from liberated worlds began arriving in Earth's solar system, offering aid and forming the nucleus of what would become the Free Worlds Alliance. The impossible war had become something even more impossible, a galactic revolution sparked by one small world's refusal to accept subjugation. Supreme Coordinator Zalthor's planet killer was still approaching Earth, but now it faced not just humanity's desperate defiance, but an entire galaxy awakening to the possibility of freedom. The stage was set for a final confrontation that would determine not just Earth's fate, but the future of intelligent life throughout the stars. The New Galaxy. Victory against all odds. The final battle began 3 years after the first hegemony ships appeared over Earth. Supreme Coordinator Zalthor's planet killer, a vessel the size of a small moon, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Its arrival sent waves of terror across every human settlement, but it also triggered the largest coordinated military response in galactic history. Admiral Elena Martinez, now commander of the Free Worlds Alliance fleet, stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance, humanity's first quantum-powered warship. Around her, displays showed friendly contacts that would have been impossible to imagine just years before. Kalari cruisers with their elegant silver hulls, Vorthon heavy fighters bristling with weapons, and ships from 24 other species that had chosen freedom over security. "Status report," Martinez commanded. "Enemy vessel is charging its primary weapon," reported Commander Park from the tactical station. "Estimated time to firing solution, 6 hours. Allied fleet positioning, 237 ships from 15 species, all reporting ready for combat," came the response from the communications officer. Martinez nodded, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. The planet killer was designed to crack worlds open like eggs, turning their surfaces into molten slag. It had never been defeated, never even seriously challenged. The hegemony had used it 12 times in their 3,000-year history to eliminate species that posed too great a threat to their control. But those species had faced the weapon alone. Earth had allies. "All ships, this is Admiral Martinez," she broadcast to the fleet. "Today we don't just fight for our individual worlds. We fight for the right of every intelligent being to choose their own destiny. The weapon they bring against us has silenced voices across the galaxy for millennia. Today, we give those voices back their power." The plan that followed was pure human creativity applied to an impossible problem. Instead of meeting the planet killer in direct combat, The Alliance fleet would use the hegemony's own rigid tactical doctrine against them. Dr. Sarah Chen, now serving as the Alliance's chief science officer, had discovered a critical weakness in the planet killer's design. Their quantum field generators are incredibly powerful, she explained, but they're tuned to a single frequency. If we can create enough interference at exactly the right wavelength, we can cause a cascade failure. The technology required didn't exist in any single species' arsenal, but the combined knowledge of the Free Worlds Alliance made it possible. Kalari quantum computers calculated the precise frequencies needed. Vorthon engineers built the interference generators. Human pilots would deliver them to the target. As the planet killer moved deeper into the solar system, the Alliance fleet put their desperate plan into action. Small fighter craft, each carrying a quantum interference device, began high-speed runs against the massive vessel's hull. The first wave was decimated by the planet killer's defensive systems. The second wave penetrated deeper, but couldn't reach the critical targets. By the third wave, only half the Alliance fleet remained operational. "It's not working," Commander Park reported grimly. "Their defenses are adapting faster than we can adjust our attack patterns." That's when Lieutenant David Kim, piloting a modified human fighter, made the decision that would change everything. Instead of following the planned attack pattern, he broke formation and dove directly toward the planet killer's main weapon array. "Kim, what are you doing?" Martinez demanded over the communication channel. "Something they won't expect," Kim replied. "I'm going to plant my device manually. If I can get inside their defensive perimeter and detonate at point-blank range, it might be enough to start the cascade." "That's suicide." "Maybe. But if this weapon destroys Earth, billions of people die. If it succeeds here, the hegemony will use it to crush every rebellion in the galaxy. I'd rather risk one life than guarantee the end of freedom." Kim's fighter screamed through the planet killer's defensive fire, its hull blazing from multiple hits. At the last second, he ejected the quantum interference device and triggered his ship's self-destruct sequence. The explosion was visible from Mars. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, deep within the planet killer's hull, quantum fields began to destabilize. The cascade Dr. Chen had predicted spread through the massive ship's systems like wildfire, turning its own power against itself. Supreme Coordinator Zalthor's final message to his fleet was picked up by Alliance monitoring stations. "How is this possible? The calculations were perfect. The plan was flawless." The planet killer tore itself apart from within, its destruction marking the end of the hegemony's reign of terror and the beginning of a new age in galactic history. Building tomorrow. In the aftermath of victory, the real work began. The Free Worlds Alliance faced the monumental task of rebuilding galactic civilization from the ground up, replacing 3 millennia of authoritarian control with something unprecedented, a truly voluntary association of independent species. Sarah Chen found herself appointed as Earth's representative to the Alliance Council, a role that required her to help design governmental systems that had never existed before. The challenge was enormous. How do you create unity among species with completely different biologies, psychologies, and cultural values? The old system worked through forced conformity, she explained to the Council during one of their early sessions. Every species was required to fit the same template, follow the same rules, serve the same purpose. We need to do the opposite. Celebrate differences while finding common ground. The solution came from studying humanity's own history of diverse nations learning to cooperate. The Alliance Charter, drafted over 6 months of intensive negotiation, established fundamental principles while allowing each member species to govern itself according to its own nature. Dr. James Wright, now directing the Alliance Science Consortium, worked to address the technological challenges of a post-hegemony galaxy. Many worlds had become completely dependent on centralized systems that no longer functioned. "We're not just rebuilding," he told his team. "We're improving." The hegemony's technology was efficient, but brittle. "We're designing systems that can adapt, evolve, and survive disruption." The new technologies that emerged combined the best elements from multiple species. Kalari quantum computers provided processing power. Vorthon engineering offered durability and reliability. Human innovation tied it all together with creative solutions that none of the species could have developed alone. But the most important reconstruction was social and cultural. Worlds that had been subjects for centuries had to relearn how to make their own decisions. Species that had forgotten their own histories had to rediscover their identities. Commander Thalo, the former hegemony officer who had helped humanity during the war, established the Freedom Archive, a project to record and preserve the cultures that the old regime had tried to erase. "Every species has something unique to contribute," he said during the archive's dedication ceremony. "The hegemony tried to make us all the same, but diversity is our greatest strength. Every difference is a new perspective, a new solution, a new possibility." The teacher becomes the student. As the alliance matured, humanity found itself in an unexpected role. The species that had been considered primitive and aggressive was now sought out as teachers and advisors by civilizations thousands of years older. The Kalari, masters of quantum computation, asked humans to help them understand creativity and intuitive problem-solving. The Vorthons, whose engineering had built the infrastructure of half the galaxy, wanted to learn about innovation and adaptability. Sarah Chen established the first interspecies cultural exchange program, which allowed beings from different worlds to live and work together for extended periods. The program's success exceeded all expectations, leading to breakthrough discoveries and innovations that no single species could have achieved. "We're seeing the emergence of hybrid thinking," reported Dr. Lisa Park, one of the program's coordinators. Kalari logic combined with human intuition. Vorthon precision merged with human creativity. Each combination produces results that surprise even us. The Alliance's first joint exploration mission exemplified this new cooperative spirit. The survey ship ESS Unity carried crew members from 8 different species, each contributing their unique abilities to the mission. When they discovered a previously unknown form of intelligent life in the Andromeda Spiral, their diverse perspectives allowed them to establish peaceful contact where a single species crew might have failed. But humanity's greatest contribution wasn't technological or scientific, it was philosophical. The concept of freedom as a fundamental right, rather than a privilege to be earned, spread throughout Alliance space like a new form of life. Former hegemony worlds began rewriting their constitutions to include human-inspired bills of rights. Species that had never questioned authority began establishing democratic institutions. The very idea that individuals could and should make their own choices became the foundation of a new galactic civilization. Unexpected allies. Perhaps the most surprising development came from within the collapsed hegemony itself. As Alliance relief efforts reached former hegemony core worlds, they found populations eager to embrace the new order. Even some of the original hegemony species, including elements of the ancient Krithari Empire, requested membership in the Alliance. Their integration required careful negotiation and extensive reforms, but it demonstrated that the desire for freedom wasn't limited to the previously oppressed. Supreme Commander Vextal, a Krithari military leader who had initially fought against the rebellion, became one of the Alliance's most effective advocates for peaceful transition. "We ruled through fear for 3,000 years, he admitted during his application hearing. But fear is exhausting. It requires constant vigilance, endless suppression, eternal suspicion. Cooperation is more efficient, more productive, and infinitely more satisfying." The Alliance's response to former enemies became a model for post-conflict reconciliation. Rather than seeking revenge, the new galactic order focused on rehabilitation and integration. War criminals were tried and punished, but entire species weren't condemned for the actions of their leaders. This approach paid unexpected dividends when several former hegemony intelligence networks provided crucial information about hidden research facilities and secret weapons stockpiles. The voluntary cooperation of former enemies prevented numerous crises and accelerated the transition to peace. A new beginning. 5 years after the Planet Killer's destruction, Admiral Martinez stood once again on the observation deck of a space station. But this wasn't the sterile, militaristic environment of hegemony architecture. New Geneva Station, orbiting Earth, buzzed with activity from dozens of species working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old regime. Through the transparent walls, she could see construction ships from multiple worlds working together to build humanity's first interstellar colony vessel. The ship would carry volunteers from 20 different species to establish a settlement in the previously unexplored Sagittarius sector. "Hard to believe it's only been 8 years since they first arrived," said Sarah Chen, joining Martinez at the observation window. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime," Martinez replied. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday." They watched as a group of human children played with young Kalari in the station's garden section, their laughter transcending species barriers. Nearby, Vorthon artists worked with human musicians to create a new form of performance art that combined sound, light, and quantum field manipulation. "Do you think we've really changed things?" Sarah asked. "Or will someone else try to build another hegemony somewhere else?" Martinez considered the question seriously. There will always be those who seek to dominate others. But now the galaxy knows that freedom is possible. Every species has seen that cooperation works better than control. That knowledge can't be unlearned. A chime announced an incoming message from the outer colonies. The display showed Captain Kim Jong-soo, David Kim's younger brother, reporting from the frontier exploration vessel ESS Pioneer. "Alliance Command, this is Pioneer. We've made contact with a previously unknown species in the Kepler sector. They call themselves the Nathani, and they've been hiding from what they thought was still the hegemony. When we explained that the old regime had fallen and showed them the Alliance Charter, they requested immediate membership." Sarah smiled. "Another species chooses freedom. And the galaxy becomes a little bit bigger," Martinez added. As they watched, ships from a dozen worlds arrived and departed from the station's docking bays. Trade vessels carrying goods and ideas between worlds. Science ships heading out to explore the unknown. Cultural exchange transports bringing species together to learn from each other. But most importantly, they saw the everyday miracle of beings from different worlds working together as equals, each contributing their unique strengths to build something greater than any single species could achieve alone. The communication system chimed with another message, this one from the Alliance Council on Kalari Prime. President Torres appeared on the screen, her expression bright with excitement. "Admiral Martinez, Director Chen, I have news that I think you'll want to hear. The Council has just approved funding for the Galactic Heritage Project. We're going to map and document every species that was lost during the hegemony years, preserving their stories and honoring their memory." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. "How many species did we lose?" "Our preliminary research suggests over 300 distinct civilizations were eliminated or absorbed beyond recognition during the hegemony's reign. Each one had unique perspectives, technologies, and cultures that could have enriched the galaxy immeasurably." Martinez nodded solemnly. "We can't bring them back, but we can make sure they're never forgotten." "Exactly. And we can ensure that what happened to them never happens again." As the transmission ended, Sarah turned back to the observation window. In the distance, she could see the memorial garden that had been built on Luna, Earth's moon. Each flower, tree, and monument represented a species that had been lost to tyranny and oppression. It served as both a remembrance and a warning. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Sarah said quietly. "What would have happened if we had accepted their terms? If we had chosen safety over freedom?" Martinez considered this. "We'd probably be alive, fed, housed, and utterly miserable, and every other species in the galaxy would still be living under the boot of oppression." "Do you think they understand now? The former hegemony leadership, I mean. Do they understand what they gave up by choosing control over cooperation?" "Some do. Commander Thaley certainly does. But I think for others, the concept of voluntary cooperation is still too alien to grasp. They spent so many centuries believing that order could only come through force that they can't imagine any other way." A new group of ships approached the station, their hulls bearing the insignia of the Outer Rim Exploration Service. These were vessels crewed entirely by volunteers from species that had never worked together before the Alliance formed. Their mission was to push the boundaries of known space, seeking new worlds and new civilizations to invite into the growing community of free peoples. The really amazing thing, Sarah observed, is how much faster we're advancing now. Under the hegemony, technological and social progress was carefully controlled, limited to what the ruling council thought was safe. Now, with everyone free to innovate and share their discoveries, we're advancing at an exponential rate, Martinez finished. New technologies, new art forms, new ways of thinking and being. It's like the entire galaxy is having a renaissance. The evidence was everywhere. Medical breakthroughs that combined knowledge from multiple species were eliminating diseases that had plagued various worlds for centuries. Engineering marvels that incorporated the best ideas from dozens of civilizations were making space travel safer and more efficient. Cultural fusion was creating entirely new forms of expression that enriched the lives of beings across the galaxy. But perhaps most importantly, the psychological transformation was remarkable. Species that had lived in fear for generations were rediscovering joy, creativity, and hope. The Alliance's mental health statistics showed dramatic improvements in quality of life indicators across all member worlds. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if another species had been first to defy the hegemony, Sarah mused. Would the result have been the same? Martinez shook her head. I don't think so. Each species would have brought their own strengths and perspectives to the fight. The Kalari might have outcalculated them. The Vorthons might have out-engineered them. But humans, we brought something else. What? Stubborn hope. The refusal to accept that the way things are is the way things have to be. The belief that everyone deserves better, even if we've never seen what better looks like. The truth of this was evident in how the Alliance operated. While other species contributed their technical expertise and logical analysis, humans consistently pushed for solutions that seemed impossible, for goals that appeared unreachable. They refused to accept limitations that others took for granted. A soft chime indicated that the station's evening shift was beginning. Across New Geneva Station, beings from multiple worlds prepared to continue the work of building a better galaxy. In laboratories, scientists from different species collaborated on projects that could benefit everyone. In cultural centers, artists explored new forms of expression that transcended species boundaries. In government offices, representatives worked to solve the complex challenges of interspecies cooperation. We should head to the council meeting, Martinez said, checking her schedule. They're voting on the proposal to establish a permanent base in the Magellanic Clouds. The first step toward intergalactic exploration, Sarah nodded. Do you think we're ready for that? I think we're as ready as we'll ever be. And more importantly, I think the universe is ready for us. As they walked through the station's corridors, they passed displays showing the latest news from across Alliance space. A new trade agreement between the Kalari Confederation and the reformed Vorthon Republic. The successful completion of a joint terraforming project in the Centaurus sector. The graduation of the first class from the Interspecies Academy, where young beings from different worlds learned to work together from an early age. But the most significant news was the quiet, everyday reports of cooperation and friendship that had become the norm rather than the exception. Former enemies working side by side. Species that had never interacted before discovering common ground. The gradual emergence of a truly galactic civilization based on freedom, respect, and mutual benefit. As they entered the council chambers, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. 8 years ago, humanity had faced extinction rather than accept subjugation. That choice had seemed desperate, perhaps even suicidal, to many observers. But it had been the right choice, not just for humanity, but for every intelligent being in the galaxy who had dreamed of something better than mere survival under tyrannical rule. The council session began with the traditional affirmation that each member species recited. We are free, we choose cooperation, we build tomorrow together. Simple words, but they represented a revolutionary concept that had transformed the galaxy. As the representatives began their deliberations on intergalactic exploration, Sarah smiled at the thought that somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, Other civilizations might be waiting for the message that freedom was possible. Earth had chosen defiance over submission, hope over fear, cooperation over control. The consequences had indeed reshaped the stars themselves, creating a galaxy where every voice could be heard and every dream could be pursued. The revolution that began with humanity's refusal to kneel had become something greater than anyone could have imagined, a new way of being that honored the dignity and potential of every intelligent life form in the universe. And this was just the beginning.